Allow the natural consequences of your boundaries protect you. Instead of trying to manipulate or beg or try to force other people to not cross our boundaries and respect our boundaries and treat us right, that becomes so draining, and you actually do not have any control over what other people do. The only thing you can control is your own behavior, your own thoughts, and your own boundaries. Let me give you a piece of information that is going to change your perspective completely. If they broke your boundary, you didn't have one. If someone is able to just break your boundary, walk all over you, do whatever they please with you, disrespect you, not follow through, not commit, and that just is okay, then you didn't really have a healthy boundary to begin with. Because if you had a healthy boundary, then that behavior, that break of trust that they did would cancel them out of your life. It would literally just remove them. They would no longer exist in your field. They would not do that. They wouldn't cross that line. And a lot of people think that setting boundaries means you're communicating, arguing, saying, oh, treat me with respect. Oh, I don't like it when people do this. I don't like that. Oh, why did you do that? That crossed my boundary. For little things, sometimes this is okay. Like, hey, don't leave your clothes on the floor. For little things that don't really matter, like superficial things that aren't gonna hurt anyone's feelings, yeah, it's fine to communicate. But for the boundaries that really matter, for the boundaries that truly hurt us, and the ones that we feel like we are scared to set, we don't know how to set, it's like everybody crosses those boundaries and it really affects us deeply, those are the important ones, and those are the ones that you can't really communicate. Most of the time, people will only understand your boundaries and follow them when it is communicated energetically. Now, I'm going to get into what that means, so if you're a little bit confused, like, what do you mean energetically? Don't worry. But communicating these boundaries is more something that you do through your actions, through your energy, through your presence. It's not always something that needs to be said, and it's not something the other person may even consciously know. They may just subconsciously pick up on the energy, the actions, the vibe, and they just know subconsciously not to cross certain lines, not to overstep certain boundaries, not to behave in certain ways. Like, sometimes you just know, right? Like, imagine, have you ever had those people in your life that, like, you just know? You look at them and you're like, I'm not gonna, I gotta be respectful. I have to, make sure that, I don't cross the line. Like, you just meet certain people and it's nothing about them, really. It's nothing that they say. It's just something about their energy. You just feel the need to be respectful and make sure that they're okay, you're okay, like everything's going well. Well, that's something that you can radiate as well. Using natural consequences to your boundaries is way more effective. It's been way more effective in my life. It's been way more effective in the lives of several of my clients. And it's just something that is going to allow you to sort of take a step back, decide for yourself what your boundary is, and then let that do the work for you. You're not going to have to step up and yell at people, argue with them, tell them they have to change and be like this, be like that. You will just change your behavior first. Your energy will change as well, and other people will start responding to you differently, or they may remove themselves from your life. This is something that you have to be open to. Not everybody's in a place where they are healed and they are able to have healthy relationships. So just because you are making this change and you are stepping into your healthy relationship era with healthy boundaries does not mean that they're going to be able to level up with you. So you have to be willing to kind of let some people go, and don't take it personally. It doesn't mean that they hate you. It doesn't mean that you're not valuable enough. It simply means that they're not in that place, and you need to respect that. You need to hold space for them to be them, as well as hold space for you to make that growth and change. And if at some point in the future you reconnect or something changes, then there's always that option. But in the moment, you're going to have to let certain people drift away and go about their life. I know for me, when I've had to energetically shift those boundaries in the past, and I've gone through phases of huge people pleasing, and I've had to really step back and evaluate my behavior in my relationships. And once you change that and alter that, at least for me, I went through a period of being kind of lonely, isolating and just being with myself and being with my own energy and reacquainting myself with what I desire, because sometimes we can get so caught up in everyone else's energy that we start to absorb everything around us and we don't really have our own identity anymore. So it's really good to kind of just take a step back and let yourself be alone for a little bit. You don't have to communicate this to anybody. You don't have to say, oh, I'm taking a break. You don't have to go and post on your story and tell people that you're gonna take some time to heal yourself. Don't do that, because that calls in the wrong kind of energy. It calls in energy vampires. It calls in just not the good kind of energy. When you're going through it, you want to surround yourself by people that support you. And chances are not everybody that is online, not everybody that is around you, your neighbors, not everybody has your best interests. And like I said, everyone's going through their own phase, their own part in their journey. So they may not be at that point where they can support you, and then they may actually hold you back. So what I see happen with some of my clients is that they go through these very natural changes within themselves in tapping back into their desires, who they actually are, that essence, that deep essence. And then they go and anytime they get a, what do you call it? A revelation. Because if you've been in personal development, every day it's something different. It's something new every day. And I love seeing this journey with my clients. But when they get a new realization, they try to bring their friends into it and bring everyone on their social media and post about it on their story and say, oh, I'm going through this and I learned this and I learned that. And that, don't get me wrong, to a certain extent I do that, right? I share a lot of information, vulnerable stuff here on YouTube, so I completely understand the desire to want to include other people. But if you don't have these healthy boundaries, if you haven't created that structure for yourself in your relationships, then it can open up for a lot of negative energy to come in from other people. And you can always transmute this. You can always take that energy, turn it into something better, but it's best to kind of just stay away from that for a little bit, especially when you're first learning how to set boundaries, because it's a lot easier to just avoid it, keep to yourself, process your growth, and then when you're confident in your own growth, then you go and you talk about it online. So if you're like still in the process of the healing and you're communicating that to everybody and you're opening yourself up to everybody, like giving you information and advice and energy and stuff that you don't really know how to filter yet, then it's really hard for you to like it's gonna just slow you down, right? It's gonna just slow you down. Again, no limits here. Like if you do this, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna make it through, but just know that it's gonna be extra steps to transmute the energy coming in before you can move forward. But once you are confident and you are firm in your boundaries, then when you communicate and you tell people how you feel and you go vulnerable, you're more easily able to get a better response from those people because they can feel your energy is more confident, and you're able to easily transmute the energy because you've already learned that. So again, do what you please, but it's totally normal to go through a period of sort of isolation and a little bit of detachment from the external because you're focusing on you, right? So when you are creating healthy boundaries, you're using natural consequences. You're not manipulating anybody. When you're using natural consequences and you're establishing those healthy boundaries, you're not forcing anyone to do anything. You're probably not even going to be saying anything really. You're simply going to change your behavior in certain ways to let the other person understand subconsciously that there is a boundary there. And then from there, it's really out of your hands, because then the other person will decide whether or not they want to accommodate that boundary or whether or not they just don't want to be in your life, right? But the biggest mistake you can make here is to bend your boundaries for people because you feel like you couldn't do better. Like I see a lot of this, and it truly makes my heart hurt, because you are worth everything. Like you are divine, okay? The thought that you don't think you could find someone better, or the thought that you don't think you deserve better, the fact that you're thinking this or feeling this, like, it hurts me because it's not true. It's so far from true. And no, you are the one that gets to decide what your worth is. You get to decide what you want. So if you set a boundary and you have decided that for yourself, and then someone comes in with their shining personality and you just like break your own boundaries to accommodate them because you think they're so cool and like you'll never meet someone like them, or they're really nice, it's fine, or you don't want to be mean. Again, that's going into people pleasing, but like whatever it may be, do not break these boundaries unless you genuinely have decided that you want to change your boundary, or that this certain thing doesn't matter to you that much. Don't change your boundary for specific people just because you think you have to in order to keep them in your life. Applying natural consequences is exactly what it sounds like. You aren't vindictive, you aren't accommodating, you don't people please. You allow the natural consequences of the situation to set the boundary for you. So let's say you made plans with someone, and let's say they try to reschedule the plans last minute, and say, oh, can we meet an hour later, blah blah blah. And this is something that you have set as a boundary for yourself, that no, like, people need to show up on time or just reschedule. And this is a behavior that this person has consistently done, and you feel like they're crossing your boundary, then you allow the natural consequences. You set yourself up in a way where you do something else, right? If someone is made plans with you and they cancel last minute, you don't make plans with them again. Natural consequences, right? You say, okay, I'm gonna be there at this time. If they show up, they show up. Like, you make plans that it doesn't matter if they show up or not. You invite a third person, right? Because if they've made plans with you in the past and then just not showed up, they've proved that they're not trustworthy in that way. So you allow the natural consequences to handle the situation, right? Now, of course, everybody has certain times where they just make a mistake, right? This is why communication comes in, and this is where, you know, if someone communicates, oh, this happened, it won't happen again, like blah, 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 then all you have to do is stay aware and see that their actions line up with their words. So if they're constantly using different excuses and then they repeat the same thing over and over again, chances are they're just manifesting those things to happen in order to be able to cross your boundary. Like, I know it sounds kind of weird to say, but the way the world works is funny, okay? The way things happen, sometimes it's very predictable. And so if certain people have specific patterns, something will always come up, even if they're not literally making it up, even if they're telling the truth, somehow something always comes up, because that's the pattern. So observe the patterns around you and create those boundaries accordingly. Allow the natural consequences to let the other person know energetically that you're not the one. Now, of course, setting these specific boundaries and coming up with these situations and knowing how to handle certain scenarios in a way where your boundaries are being communicated subconsciously, it can vary situation to situation. So everyone is different, right? Every relationship is different. Usually working one-on-one on relationship coaching, I'll go through certain scenarios and then we'll practice like how they're going to react. We'll practice like, if this happens, what are you going to do? If that happens, what are you going to do? Obviously that's super fun too, but you can do this with yourself, right? You can get your journal out and think about like the situations that have happened in the past where you feel like your boundaries have been crossed. And then think about those same scenarios and think about how you can create natural consequences, or just allow the natural consequences to resolve the situation. Oftentimes, when people cross our boundaries, we get into fight or flight. We're not thinking clearly, and then we try to accommodate them and meet them halfway, so that way the situation can be like resolved and we can feel at peace. But then at the end of the day, you go to bed at night and you feel like a little bit taken advantage of. You feel like, you know, like they just took it too far, like they crossed the line, like you should have stood up for yourself, or you should have done something differently. Like, I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling of like, oh, I should have stood up for myself. Like, why did I just let them do that? You know, and I've felt that a lot in the past. That's why I do this, and that's why I'm teaching this, because it's so easy to avoid these mistakes once you understand the mindset and you understand the energy. I'm telling you. But don't be vindictive, all right? Like, don't do things in a way to try to make them feel bad for crossing your boundary. Like, you're literally just letting the natural consequences of crossing your boundary handle itself. Like, you're not doing anything extra, right? So they said something inappropriate to you. You don't awkward laugh. You don't like try to cover up the situation and make it okay. You sit there like with a blank face, like, what did you say? Like, I'm sorry, what did you say? I didn't hear you. Like, because no. And they're gonna self-correct, right? So another thing with this is that you want to give the other person space and time to adjust to your new behavior, because if someone changes and they've created new boundaries for themselves, in the beginning, the other person might like rebel a little bit. So I actually had this happen with one of my clients. It was kind of creepy and weird how, like, when we were talking, we both talked about this specific situation and like it happened that exact way. So sometimes, you know, law of cause and effect, law of attraction, law of assumption, you just like figure things out, right? It's kind of eerie when that happens, but basically it was a situation where a friend of hers had been consistently crossing a boundary of showing up late and always having like that last minute excuse as to why she was running late. And so my client would always have to like accommodate her schedule and like show up late. So I suggested to her, you know, a great way to set this boundary is set yourself up in a way where you give like an hour for the plans and then you make an appointment afterwards. So that way, if she's running late again, you can say, oh, well, I'm sorry, you know, you're running late, but I can't meet you later because I have an appointment. So that is a very subtle and easy way to set a boundary. Now, of course, if you don't actually have an appointment, you can lie. I don't suggest lying because it just sets up a weird pattern and it'll make you feel like you don't want to feel like you're lying, but you can easily make plans, right? You can easily set yourself up in a way where you have something to do. Maybe you can have a to-do list ready to go and you say, okay, well, at this time, I'm going to start the to-do list. So that's just what I'm going to do, right? Those are my plans. That's my commitment. So you can always set yourself up in a way where you are in integrity to the situation. But once she did this, it was so weird because then the friend was like almost like backtracking a little bit and saying, oh, well, maybe I can meet a little bit earlier, like blah, blah, blah. So it just goes to show you that sometimes people act in certain ways, not because of you, but because there's something that they haven't healed yet. So oftentimes when people come in with issues with being on time, typically, I know it sounds weird, but this has been my experience with the clients I've worked with, it's an issue with control. So it's an issue with maybe in their childhood, they didn't have control over their life in a certain way that like deeply affected them. And so now the form that they get that control is through like making other people wait for them. So I have found that that's one of the things that causes that, but that's not what this video is about. Anyways, when she set that energetic boundary and had plans to do, and then the friend was like backtracking, they ended up not doing anything that time. The next time they were making plans, the friend tried the same thing again, but in a different way. So this may happen with you. You may have an energetic boundary and then you set that boundary, the other person self-corrects, but then the second time around, they try to break the boundary in a different way, or they try a different approach to try to catch you off guard. Now, this is not conscious. The other person is not out here to get you, okay? It's very subconscious behavior. They don't consciously know what they are doing unless they're toxic, right? They might be doing this on purpose. You never know. But 99% of the time, the person doesn't even know that that's what they're doing. The only reason I even know what's going on is because I've dealt with this too many times and I know the signs. I know the behaviors. I know the energy behind it. I understand it. Remember, you are not a victim. You're a powerful divine being and you have the power to create the exact relationships that you desire. You don't have to just settle for what is being given to you. You get to be the divine creator or creatress, you know, manifesting goddess, manifesting king. You get to be that person, and I'm so excited for you. I'm so honored that I get to be a part of your growth journey. So I hope this video helped, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Mwah.